and welcome back to another video. In this video I'll be going through the premium midfielders for AFL Fantasy 2025, going through my opinion on them, whether they're a decent enough start or whether you should probably hold off on them, etc. as some roles are changing a little bit, some not necessarily the role changing, but more so the players around them changing and how that could influence them. But anyway, let's just jump straight into this video here. So, as you can see, for those on YouTube, you can see that I've got the midfielders just by, that should be actually total by price point, and then there you go. So, first midfielder up, Adam Treloar. We know that in the past, and I should actually probably just quickly grab up DFS here to get the player summaries. I'll try and go through this quickly enough here, but Treloar I don't think is a good option just because he is getting on the older side. I believe he is 30 or 31. Not 100% sure about that, but as you can see, it's his best season in 6 years, 7 years. Oh wait, no, 1, 2, 3, 4. Since he was at Collingwood in 2019, so that's 5 years. So I just don't expect him to be able to play a full season again. Backing him up for a full season, I don't see that happening. I expect also to see potentially the likes of a Riley Sanders play a little bit more in the midfield, so that'll help him out alongside the acquisition of Matt Kennedy. I think those two will take a little bit of CBAs away from the main three, potentially. So I am potentially looking at going against like a Bont or someone like that, but I just have to sort of see the options again. Zach Merritt here, again, another guy that's just very, very awfully consistent. I think he does 107, 108 again. I just don't think you can purchase him because of the opening round. But then again, he also is on the round 4, which is a lot easier to cover. So you can kind of expect to cover him with a 60 score, 70 score, I feel like. And at that point, that's sort of only burning 40 points or so for a guy that's probably going to be a very, very, very consistent. So, and he does have a really nice run to start, so I'm thinking maybe he is like the option if I was to go for any sort of early buy guy, because he does play the 4, so he does play this type of run early, so I'll have to look into it. But if there was one guy that I do like off the early buy, it is the Zach Merritt play. Errol Gulden, I don't like this just because that's a tough run to start. I feel like he's going to probably face a tag in one of these games, let alone potentially 2. If it's not necessarily a full tag, it's definitely sort of a half run with roll. So I expect him to probably be a 105 through the first 3 and then explode after that. I know that they'll probably try still side bottom on him here, which is a little bit annoying and a little bit worrying because side bottom did get him. But that was later on in the season when Gulden was showing signs of fatigue. So I wonder if with the buy here and it being early on in the season, whether that will help him out just fractionally. As Errol's probably someone you do want to own. It's just about the timing of when you want to own him. And I'd say probably this sort of back end here is probably in and around the buys. Like say round 9 onwards, I'd probably be looking at him because he only really has Carlton, who are injury prone already. Carlton, Port Adelaide, Fremantle, and GWS to a certain extent, and Brisbane, that are really tough matches for him. And that was 5 out of 15. So yeah, I really like Gulden in the upgrade season. Flanders we talk about in the defensive premiums. Josh Dunkley I think falls under the same sort of category as Errol in that it's just hard to own him in the first set of buys, given that most people are going to own Smith, most people are going to own Coleman, most people are going to own Hooley, most people are going to own Ashcroft. That's already 4 guys out of your 29 potential, or there could be 30 green dots at that point, probably 29 at that point. So that's already getting you down to 25 scorers. And you're already going to be losing some of the top end scorers in your side. Especially if you have, say, a Caden Cleary, that gets you up to 5. And I might be missing someone as well that's on the early buy that we're heavily into. Maybe one of the rookies that I'm missing, etc. Maybe someone has like an Ed Allen or something like that, etc., etc. or an Angus Sheldrick, or a Callum Mills, etc. So you can kind of see how you could easily, or a Perryman, you could kind of see how you easily get up to that market early. And that's probably why I don't like any premiums on the round 3 bye. And that's why I have a different opinion to Zach Merritt, who has a soft fixture early, but also has the round 4 bye, which is a lot easier to cover with because there's no real Hawthorn rookies that I like. And there's no real Essendon rookie. Is it Essendon? Essendon would make it. Yeah, so our Hawley is able to cover actually. So that makes it one better there, okay? I misspoke there. But in terms of the round 3 guys off. But in terms of the round 4 guys, yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier if Merritt is on there, with there being basically no on-field options outside of him actually off on that round. Bont, I feel like he's in for a bounce back year. It's just worrisome that they have both Sanders and Kennedy there, that are 2 on-ballers that can play different positions, but could also just take some time off. Bont has also been moved around a little bit, and with Jamara's situation, I am a little bit worried about what happens with Bont. But he's definitely a guy that I'm just sort of he's in the mix, I would say, at the moment. Jack Steele, I think he's going to be an interesting guy with Roma and potentially Boyd. I think I've sort of backtracked a little bit over the last 24, 48 hours on the Boyd conversation and how that's going to play out. And so, yeah, I could see it going either way. I think the position I'm in compared to some of my mates who've been in the AFL industry, I think you got to respect their opinion. And so, I think Boyd could potentially play. And I think it could be a very good thing for Jack Steele that actually happens, because, I think he could easily get, if you have a fresh ruckman the whole time and you have a 60% Marshall, 40% Boyd split, and they're both class players. Boyd is really, really good in terms of getting hit outs. I think Steele could be an interesting proposition here. In terms of just getting the ball. I think also him having guys like McRae, Philippou, etc. in that midfield could actually really help him. So I'm intrigued about Steele this year, because I feel like he could go back to 110. So he's not definitely an option, but I feel like he's one that I'm watching over the preseason. Sam Walsh with the hamstring, no thank you. I don't want his body breaking down. Zach Butters, he's definitely an interesting one. I feel like he could do that 110. He does also have the perfect buy in, is it round 12 or is he round 13 is the perfect buy of Fremantle and St Kilda, I believe. So Zach Butters has the round 12 buy. With the buys being structured a little bit differently with 5 rather than 4, it's a little bit easier to cover, but we know that the round 12 buy has, I believe the Dogs have the round 12 buy if I remember correctly. Yes, they do. So you do have, and I believe North Melbourne also have the round 12 bye. So you could have Cherry, Walsh, Bont, etc. all off on that bye. Sheasel as well, I believe. So that's an interesting buy. I think do the City Swans also carry that round 12? No, they're round 14. Someone else carries that round 12. That's an interesting buy proposition. But Zach Butters, I think he does. Does he take the next step, or is it just Connor Rozee going to go back to his 105 or so reigns? That's an interesting question. I think he does have a gettable fixture early, so he'll definitely be interesting. I think he's one that's definitely going to go on the watch list, and we'll see how he goes in pre-season at the moment. But yeah, I definitely think he does have a gettable first sort of 7 or so weeks. As it'll be interesting what Sydney do with their tagger and James Jordan in that round 5-6 range with Hawthorn and Sydney. That is a little bit awkward. But yeah, outside of that, he does have to play the 2 tagging teams twice all 3 tagging teams twice, which is a little bit annoying. So we'll just have to wait and watch on that front. Jordan Dawson is definitely someone that is in the wait and watch category massively. Especially with Bont as well there. They're 2 that I really am just waiting and watching. This is a massively open run. He only plays the Swans once. He plays the Hawks twice. Does he play Carlton? He plays Carlton once. So he only has to face 4 taggers. I think it's also a little bit harder to tag Dawson compared to others. It's just whether he gets that Mr. Fix-It role or not. But I definitely think he has 10 points of value potentially in there. So he's one that I'm definitely waiting and watching. I'm pretty sure he also held an injury through the back half of last year. So I completely forgot his name for a second there when I was just searching it up. I was almost tempted to click on Liam Dawson for some reason. But anyway, here, as you can see, I think he sort of came back. He obviously had that concussion and he sort of sorted himself out in the last 6 rounds. You can see 109.7 in the last 6. If you remove the concussion game, he goes to 115 in the last 5. But you can kind of see, I feel like this middle patch here was very, very up and down, scoring-wise, but also very, very consistent in a certain way, 106 in 11 games. So it was just this front half of the year. As you see here, if we just go here, the first 5 games, 98, which isn't even that bad. So I'm very, very intrigued about him. If we go to his CBAs, when he had sub 60% or so CBAs, if we just go to that here, you'll kind of see he averaged 101.5. I'm not going to include that game, but yeah, 9 games, 96.6 when he had sub 60%. Let me just adjust that actually. There we go. So it's 101.3 from 13 games when he was sub 60%. When he was above 70%, 60% I should say, again, messing up my words there, but if you go to that and you actually sort it out here, you'll see he averages 115. So he just needs to get that on-ball roll, and it's 115. Simple as that. He's got a little bit of inbuilt value in there with the that injury game there, if we just adjust that as well. So I just think Dawson is definitely one that's massively on the watch list for me, comparative to others, just because if he gets that midfield role, if they move, which they seemingly have, Laird out of that midfield, like it's 106.4. So he's already got 1.1 points of value inbuilt into him. But I feel like it's more like 10. If he can get that midfield role, we're just going to have to wait and watch with him. Isaac Heaney, I think much like Errol Goulden, early buy, don't like it too much. Too many players on that round 3 buy. Nick Dacos, injuries as well as the early buy. Well, should say he's got that foot injury, which can be a little bit nagging. So I just wouldn't go there. As well as Port do potentially tag. He's got Sydney early, Carlton early. Brisbane might send someone to him, a bigger body. So he's got sort of tough games early. I think with the injury tips me over the edge of not suggesting him, to be honest with you. He could obviously go out and go 150 in the first game of the year, and then suddenly it's you have to have him. Andrew Brayshaw, I really like this. Caleb Sarong's been a little bit injury prevention, I would say, in the preseason. Had massive strapping on his shoulder, so I don't like that option as much. I like Brayshaw a lot more. I feel like he's the type of guy that if he can just get a fast start, or even just a decent enough start, he can really come home strongly. If we just look at, if I can type properly, far out, my typing's been really poor. But anyway, if we just look at his last, I want to say 10 games, he was on fire. If we just look at this here, going back to here, you'll see last 10 games are 111.8. If we just take that back, it's 8 games for a 112.8. And yeah, you just look at him when you basically have him above, I want to say 60% CBAs. If we look at that quickly here, you'll see that him above 60% CBAs is actually running at a 106.7, which is almost top. Whereas 106.7, that would put him, what's that, about 8th or so. And I think he almost can do better than that, to be honest with you. I think he can do, honestly, almost about a 110 marker, give or take. As, he had a couple of stinkers in here. If you bounce that up to 70%, if we bounce that up to 70%, I believe, 107.3. So it shows that he holds around that 106, 107 marker with good, with good CVAs. So I just feel like he has a large chance now to, if he gets off to a decent enough start, to go 110. And 110 is massive. in the context of this, is I feel like that will confirm top 6. I know it would be leading scorer, but I feel like we're going to get a bounce back here slightly from the from the midfielders here. Noah Anderson, also a decent shout. Obviously has that early bye, which is a little bit annoying, but we know that we're not really going to hold anyone from that early bye other than potentially like a Rioli or something like that. And we know that, so it doesn't hurt as much. It does still hurt a little bit, but 2.5 points isn't too much across the whole season. So guys like Noah Anderson, if he pops off in opening round, especially with the kind early fixture, like he's got a first 5-6 rounds here where it's very, very easy for him to achieve sort of a 120 or so marker. He's the type of guy that can get away from us. So definitely a guy to consider based on opening round, especially with the favourable early bye round where you're going to be able to cover him, I believe, with a 60 or so score. Caleb Sarong, we talked about him sort of in tandem with Andrew Brayshaw. Matt Crouch, I feel like his time is about to be phased out. And I don't want to touch a guy where there's concerns about the role. And that's what Matt Crouch is. So yeah, no, thank you. Sinclair, we talked about him, the defenders. Lockie Neal, pretty much you can go back to what I said about Dunks, go back to what I said about Errol, go back to what I said about Isaac Heaney, etc. Follow that. Paddy Cripps, does he back up his Brownlow? I just have never really seen Paddy Cripps as a good fantasy scorer. I know that I'm about to be absolutely demolished when they show the stats here, and he averaged like 110 in the season or something. 109.3 back in 2018, but has gone 105 at his best in the overall season. Well, that's adjusted actually. If you look back, his best since the pandemic is a 102, and his best since 2018 is after 2018 was a 102 as well. He hasn't really gotten too much value, and I just wonder with all the injuries, etc., what's going to happen to that Carlton side. Does Cripps himself find himself injured or whatnot? I just cannot go there with so much uncertainty in that Carlton side, and I just don't see Cripps as being that value guy, because he's not. If he was to flip this handball to like a 0. The kick to handball to a 0.8 would help a little bit. He'd get another 2-3 points, something like that. But he really needs to get the almost mark and tackles up. The non-disposal work is where he really shone. 4.2 and 6.3. That's his career high almost in tackles by 0.3 off, but definitely his career high in marking, as well as his career high in handballs and kicks. But you can see that is where his main domain is, that he's going to gain the points, is in that category there. So as well as he was a lot better with the free kick count or free kick differential. So yeah, I'm just intrigued about it, but I just think that Paddy Cripps is one that we have to give a miss, just because he isn't the best fantasy scorer. Tom Green, early bye, round 2, definitely an interesting proposition. Much to the same of what I said with Noah Anderson. I do like their fixture to a certain degree early. I don't think there's too many hard midfields. We know the Collingwood midfield they feast on. Melbourne midfield they should honestly feast on. If we look at the actual opposition stats and go by Collingwood, he averages 81. I would say he got injured in one of them. Melbourne, he averages 90. So he hasn't actually averaged too well against any opponent. I'd love how he averages 93 against the Swans, even though he gets tagged in games and had a 7 against them or 5 or whatever. So, yeah, I just feel like he's the type of guy that he's a round 0 watch, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens there with him. I know it sort of sucks that I can't give you much info this far out, but I feel like he's the type of guy that we see a round 0 score and he goes 140 and he can get away from us quick. So him, Flanders and Anderson are the 3 or so premium guys that I'm genuinely watching in round 0, or top end premium guys, I should say. Obviously, you have the bottom end guys that are like the 95s, the 93s, etc. that you can watch and sort of see how they go. But those 3 are the genuine guys out of the primos that I think could pop and have a kind fixture early. Rory Laird, moving to halfback, I just think we grab him in like round 7 or so when he's averaging like 95 or whatever. and is almost top of the line there, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there, given that the top of the line was like a 106 or whatever. I think top 6, but then it dropped away quickly. Like, you could have top 10ers go 100 and it doesn't burn you too much. McCluggage, I just think he could be potentially phased out a little bit in the Brisbane midfield, and he could be sort of a Mr. Fix-It a little bit. Rosie, he's a guy that I'm kind of looking at as well if I need a little bit more value. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy that I wait and watch, given that I want to see how the Collingwood midfield goes in round 0, how they sort of concede scoring, because Rosie has that, has Richmond, has Essendon, has a really kind run. Obviously has round 5-6 against Hawks and the Sydney Swans, but I feel like he's also the type of guy that won't necessarily get tagged as much, comparative to Zach Butters, who's more of their possession guy. So will definitely be interesting there to see who gets the tags early on. LDU, I just think with that North Melbourne midfield, he probably doesn't improve. Could be the guy that does, but I'd rather actually see it on paper and react to it rather than select it in hope of it actually happening. As we know, and I'll do a whole video on this, but yeah, we know that the value systems, it's a lot easier to get for players to return to historical value. For injury value, such as like Kitty Coleman, he's sort of discount value. I would say injury value is more so the sort of Tom Green type, who had that injury game that sort of wiped away 2 or 3 points. You have discount value, which is Kitty Coleman, who did get injured but didn't play, or like a Bazza Smith. That's discount value, I would say. And then number 4 is the, number 4? Positional change, which is like Nick Martin last year. Who else is getting positional changes? Potentially a Callum Mills, etc. like that, or a Harry Perriman. So those are sort of the 4 values that I do put higher up on over the types of a natural progression, which is what we're talking about with LDU, I feel like. Tim Taranto, definitely a guy that I consider as being massively on the watch list. He's a guy that could easily get back to 115 or so, but I just don't know where the points fall for Richmond, given that they've got so many of the older guys out for youngsters, and I feel like there's potentially 10, 15, 20 points available in 3 or 4 different positions. Does that go to Short? Does that go to Taranto? Does that go to potentially Boston? Or does it just get lost to them being a bad side? It's really intriguing to see how that goes. But I'd put a banker on Timmy Taranto being better, I feel like. Kelly, Dacos, Caldwell, no. I just don't see it. Caldwell could take that next step. We know he had that injury game later on in the year. But I just don't see him being a top-line midfielder, given his best was a 94. But could he get a better, with another year under his belt, could he get even better? Intriguing. Holmes is a defender. Rowell, no. Chad Warner, impact player, don't think so. Took Miller, I feel like his role will slowly get worse, especially with Lombard coming in. Rowell, Anderson, who else is in that midfield? You also have potentially Jake Rogers taking an increased role, etc. Hayden Young, certainly an intriguing one as a 950k guy. We just have never really seen him hit the heights. Obviously, his first year in the midfield, it was really good. But it was sort of very, very consistent sort of 90s and 100 scoring. So it wasn't... It didn't get away from you too much, I feel like, when he was... he did have defender status, but it didn't feel like he got away from you. So, obviously has that kind buy and has a pretty good run to start the year. Will definitely be a watch in the practice games, as he could take on that sort of M3, M4 range. But yeah, will definitely just be a wait and watch, I feel like. 2.43% owned, so it would be a pod as well. Elliot Yeo, no, body can't hold up. Ollie Wines, I think we've seen the best of him already. Petrarca, injury prone-ish, but I'd like to see the practice games to see how he goes. Horn Francis, I just feel is a forward anyway. Akers, no. Libba. And then we're kind of getting already into sort of the lower end mid prices, so I'll just go down to 880k, I feel like. Libba, I feel like is past his prime almost and is slightly going to just decrease slightly year on year. Jack Viney, I feel like as well. Almost the same boat is 30, so I don't feel like he could be that guy. Ed Richards is an interesting case just to see how he goes in that midfield, but you do have Bont, Treloar, Libba, so what role does he necessarily have? and I don't like those sort of in-betweeny roles, especially because he's got midfielder only status. I feel like he could average 90 or so. Tim Kelly, no, I just think he's sort of past it as well, being 30 as well. Newcomb is definitely an interesting guy, age 23. I feel like he does take the next step, and him along with Day are definitely interesting cases for us. I feel like with the round 4 bye, it's a little bit helpful. So yeah, his basically depends on what he does in round 0 against Sydney. If he goes and bangs a 120, I feel like he's the perfect candidate to jump on early. Given that you're not burning too many points as well, given that he's priced at 85. Let's take that for instance, you're probably burning only 20 points or so effectively, give or take. Given that he's only priced at 85 compared to the premium. So that's a lot easier to stomach, I feel like, than the 103s, 105s, etc. So he's definitely on the round 0 watch. But is it up against a tough Sydney Swans side who have really been focusing this preseason on contested ball. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Does he cop the tag? Is it Will Day that cops the tag, etc., etc.? So yeah, certainly a guy that I'm intrigued about early on. And that's pretty much the line there. I'll talk about Drew, Scholl, and Rowbottom in the mid-prices. But anyway, that is the video there going through the AFL Midfielders, AFL Fantasy Midfielders Premium Edition for 2025. If you did enjoy the video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on as we pump out the content in pre-season for the 2025 Fantasy and Supercoach season. If you did enjoy it, remember to do all that. And if you are listening on Spotify, give me a follow and a rating over there. And I will see you guys back here for the Mid-Pricer Madness Midfield Edition tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Bye, guys.